is reasonable to have here in town, as long as it stays small. At some point, it's going to grow large enough and start to have enough impact on the neighborhood and the neighbors that it shouldn't be here in the town, right? And so I think we have to have some wiggle room for the selectmen to make that call on a case-by-case basis. That they can't just say they can't just say, Tom, you can't have your XYZ business at all. They have to let you do it a little bit at least, right? But if it gets big enough that you actually make a living on it, probably have to move it out of town. Okay, item 7. I added a clarification that you have to own/lease and live there to do a home occupation. The wording also tries to deal with someone owning multiple adjacent lots, where they live on one lot and operate the business on the adjacent lot. That added a bunch of complicated wording, but it seems like there's a number of people here in town that own multiple lots, and it seems like for a lot of things we treat them as one thing, right? For current use, which is a state law, you get to aggregate anything that's adjacent, right? So I don't know if people are going to like that. People where you guys are going to like that idea or not. Because we could have, it would be very easy wording change to say that it's got to be on the lot that you live on. And so if your property happens to have been subdivided for some reason, or you bought 2 adjacent lots, you can't live on one and have home occupation on the other. Or if you, the way I wrote it, you can. So.
I'm sorry, I was just thinking you almost mixed farming with an actual business or a business operation. That's what you're discussing. Is if you had a building on an adjacent lot or a separate lot.
No, I'm not discussing anything that has anything to do with farming when I said that.
No, but I mean, as far as if you were a dentist and you had a building on a separate lot and you ran your dentistry shop or you ran your practice at that place.
Yes.
That would be applicable on that occasion.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
That's something that, kicking this idea around over the past few years, one of the things that I kind of use as a sample. My wife is constantly giving me a hard time that there's no decent coffee shop in this town, like a Starbucks. I'm not going to like Starbucks. So here's your example. Person A buys house on 109 and buys the next house next door, which is an adjacent lot. Lives in the first house, runs Starbucks out of the second house.
So that wouldn't be allowed under what I proposed.
Okay.
Because if there happens to be a dwelling on the lot, you got where the on-site operations are happening, you got to live there.
So you have to live in the house that the activity takes place in.
Yes, but what I had in mind was, I mean, not that I was really thinking about what I'm doing, but I own 2 lots next to each other. There's the 2 acres where the cemetery is, and then there's the 76 acres that the main house is on. If there were a barn or something like that sitting on those 2 acres, then I could maybe do something out of that barn. Or if I wanted to be building, I don't know, Adirondack chairs, I could set up and do it over in the clearing that happens to be on the 2 acres. If that's the way we want to interpret it. Otherwise, the more strict thing would be, it's got to be on the lot where I live. In which case, I wouldn't be able to use the 2 acres to do that. I would have to.
Sure, you could just merge the lots.
Right, I have to merge the lots in order to do it. Right, but it seems like, why are we going to force people to merge lots and do things, jump through arbitrary hoops in order for them to be able to use their own land in a way that would be totally allowable if they merged the lots?
Well, because
there's some line on a map that it's not allowable. Anyway, that was sort of my thought process.
Here's a rebuttal to that thought. I kind of like your idea that you say, because I think of your case example, I know your layout of your property there, where you've got your big piece of property and a little piece of property. Say you want to put a wood mill on there, like one of those little portable mills, and saw some logs or something. You take that same idea and put it on a different piece of land, like say my lot. I'm right across the street from Rick, and I decide to take that wood mill, and it's on my land, and I buy an adjacent piece of land because there's a 5-acre lot next to me for sale, and I put it there. Then it puts it in front of Craig's house, and I decide to run that mill 9 hours a day in front of Craig's house, and I've maximized my advantage of taking that disturbance and noise and whatever that normally would be put onto the homeowner, and shifted the noise and disturbance as far away as possible, and it impacted the community around me, as opposed to me being a home occupation and and bothering myself, I've subtly used the rules to shift and shove it off on somebody else's plate.
Right,
you know?
I get that.
Yeah.
But if your intent was to truly get it away from your house, you could buy the lot, merge the line, and then you could do it.
Right.
You could do it anyway.
If you're gonna have that 5-acre lot next door,
Mhm.
you could, with filing one piece of paper and, I don't know, it's like a $10 fee, or maybe, I don't even know if there's a fee, right, you merge it, right, it's like, it is, I don't know, it seems so, it's like you own the land with a minimal effort.
Yeah.
You can erase the line on the map,
Mhm.
right, really the only thing is that there's a line on a map.
Mhm.
So, but again, it's something we can discuss. I mean, you know,
I'm just-
it's an issue that is not clear in the current zoning.
Yeah.
And I think we've got an opportunity to make it clear.
I always kind of try to keep an eye out for things that, a spot where somebody could manipulate it to their own advantage and to the detriment of everybody around them.
Right. So, I mean, I think that we've got a good example where I think it breaks down where you can have, where you are going to have something where you don't live at all near there, right?
Mhm.
There was a prior owner of the 2-acre lot next to mine, who lived, 4 or 5 miles away,
Mhm.
and was running a business there.
Mhm.
And it was creating disturbance, and it wasn't bothering his wife. And so
It wasn't bothering him, it wasn't impacting him personally at all.
Right, right.
It was impacting the community around the lot where he was busy.
Exactly, and I think that, you know,
Just a minute.
the reality is that if you have to suffer, if you personally have to live with the consequences of the disturbance you're making with your business, you're gonna tend to be more
Careful.
Yeah, more careful, and it's your neighbors that you're dealing with, not somebody that lives across town or in some other town, right? So that's, but again, if you actually do live next door, and it just happens to be that at some point in the past, there was a line drawn on a map, but you own both pieces of property, I don't understand why you would, why would we necessarily restrict that? Because certainly, you know, like I said, current use, which is a state law, they basically, you get to essentially merge for the calculation of the acreage, you know, all adjacent lots. You know, you can take multiple lots to get to the 10-acre minimum and things like that. So, but that's what the issue is, and we can just, one of the points is that our existing zoning, if you read that, is it allowed or not, right, on any of these issues. And I don't think you're going to get the same answer from even half the people here.
Okay. Let me just hold on. Booney had a question here.
Well, no, I did have a question more than a comment. It seems to me, having thought about this for a couple of years myself, that there's a balance that has to be made there between the citizen's right to make a daily living, his or her right to do that, which we cannot deny, and the right of the people who live in Brookfield to have a peaceful life and have their property values. I think, that's not we shouldn't be discussing that in planning board, but it's the elephant in the room. Having property values at least increase, or if not increase, stay the same, but not decrease, because somebody's come up with a crazy idea for a, well, I don't know, a kale farm.
Firewood business.
A kale farm.
Those are so disturbing. No, so I agree mostly with what you said. I think that we shouldn't be concerned with property values directly. I think that our concern shouldn't be property values directly, but they are, what we should be concerned about is that everybody in the community is getting the maximum use of their land, right? That there's, you know, I have the right to, I have permitted uses on my land, residential, agricultural, home businesses, whatever it is, and my neighbor across the street does as well.
Right.
And part of them using it as their property as a residence is going to be impacted by the things that I do. And so we have to have a reasonable balance, and that's what the zoning is all about, is a
We're
balance.
sitting here going, okay, we have to talk about this again. We do.
Right, but I think
You're reading my mind.
you're mumbling. Anyway,
It's not what I'm saying.
So please continue.
okay, I'm almost through with this. Okay. Number 8. I removed the one accessory building clause because I think it is overly limiting and unfair that some businesses can use an accessory building and others cannot. If we keep the restriction, we should rewrite it to apply uniformly. And number 9, I moved the sign regulation and changed it to limit the total signage, thereby allowing more than one sign. The total sign area has not been changed. I just giving a little bit more flexibility there. So on number 8, so I'm through reading through this, but I think that, you know, number 8 people might want to discuss that some too. So there's most towns, I've probably read the home occupation related zoning ordinances probably from at least 100 towns. And I think every single one of them, or almost every single one of them, requires that you do your home occupation in the residence. Can't be outside, can't be in a detached garage, it has to be in the residence. But I think that's, for Brookfield, it seems silly, right? If I've got a barn, why can't I use the barn? If I've got something that was best done outside, why can't I do it outside?
You're smithy.
Excuse me?
But you want to be a blacksmith.
Or cut firewood, right? Which is a perfectly good home occupation, I think, right? How many people are going to cut firewood in their house? Right. It's the oddballs that do that, right?
Yeah, and we're neighbors.
But I mean, not many people have the means to get a tree-length log into their house.
Well, maybe more should.
And cut it and take the fire.
Full planning.
So anyway, my personal opinion is, as reflected in the way that I wrote the proposed language, I think that people should be able to use, if they want to do it in their house, they can do it in their house. If they want to do it in one or more accessory buildings, they should be able to. If they want to do it outside, if that's most appropriate, they should be able to do that as well. All of it has to be balanced against, as Booney was just discussing, against the neighbors and the impact it has on the neighborhood, right? But if somebody can do it outside without impacting the neighbors, why would we restrict that, right? I mean,
there's certain civil, health rules and order.
Right, but I mean, I've got 78 acres. There's plenty of places on my land that nobody can see or hear what I'm doing as long as it's reasonably quiet, right? I mean, if I shoot a gun and I'm doing target practice, people hear that, right? But if I'm like, I don't know, I don't know what else I'd be doing. But
you're right as a property owner to do on your, I mean, that's if you.
Well, that's my feeling. But the way our zoning is written, I can't. If I'm not in the trades, I can't use an accessory building.
I understand that.
If I'm a dentist, I can't. Our current zoning, I think, dentist would be a recognized profession probably. Nobody would probably dispute that. But I have to have my dentist's office in my house. I can't have it in my barn, right? And maybe that's what we want. I don't think so. I think that's overly restrictive. But
I think there are certain bits and pieces of town that this works great for. Like you say, there's some properties in town like yours where it's a very large property and you can kind of do anything. But then I think of the oddball spots, like we have higher density in certain locations like Cedar Park and some of the developments, where if I'm a home music teacher and my chosen vocation happens to be the drums, and I've got people coming over 3 times a day to learn the drums, my neighbors might not like that.
right, and the thing is that.
But is that something that we can even really get involved in? I mean,
yeah, the selectmen can. I think that my opinion would be that business is allowed, and the selectmen are going to be responsible, or the code enforcement officer as their agent is going to be stuck with going and
Have at it.
going and trying to limit the scope of that business. And it might be that it's perfectly acceptable that they have 3 students a day, but not 30 students a day.
not at 10 at night.
Right, and not at 10 at night. So I think that there's no reason why that's a bad business. And I don't think we want to arbitrarily say that if you only own half an acre, you can't have certain kinds of.
Well, I'm just trying to, poke your buttons,
Right, no, I think these are good, but these are good questions, right?
Yeah.
The code enforcement officer would have to take into consideration whether or not those 3 students are next to your house or next to theirs. I'm just making. No, it's very
Well, code enforcement issues usually don't come up until there's a complaint.
Right, but I mean, there's always something.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see. Rick, go ahead.
What's driving this? Is there something wrong with the current zoning ordinance that's restricting somebody or bothering somebody right now?
So I've heard anecdotes, like Gary, I guess a number of years ago, wanted to store boats in his barn for the winter. And our zoning doesn't allow that. Or it's a stretch if that could have to be a cottage industry, maybe. I don't know. Right? And I mean, there's an example of, something where, there's going to be some traffic in the spring and fall, and somebody would have to make a